In 1952, a letter written by Christine Jorgensen was leaked to the press. On December 1st of that year, the New York Daily News ran a front-page story about it. It was to her parents, and it read, "Nature made a mistake, which I have corrected, and now I am your daughter." She was pretty much the first person in the United States widely known to have had a sex change operation, which I imagine can't have been much fun.
I don't have any plans at the moment, and I thank you all for coming, but I think it's too much. Fine, thank you very much.
Have a look at this doctor from a few decades later.
I'm not prepared to consider any other approach until you've done 1 year as a female. If you don't like that, well, then you must find another doctor. Well, what's been happening to you since I saw you last?
Oh, since I last saw you, I've had the bust operation done.
Well, I must confess I take exception to your doing that. It's a medical matter. It isn't a personal choice. See, once again, you're overstepping the mark, and I don't like it, one bit.
I don't think many doctors would be comfortable speaking that way to a patient now, not with cameras, and certainly you speak to shit in any paperwork. The 1950s for Christine Jorgensen, with all the attention on her, seems pretty stressful. So a year later, enter Hollywood to broaden those gazes a little bit, a story about a transsexual just behaving normally, facing the bewildered general public. Any great director of the time would have some amazing source material to work with. Enter Ed Wood, a cross-dresser himself and also widely regarded as one of the worst directors of all time. The struggle will continue. The film was marketed as based on Christine Jorgensen's story, but it's loose source material. In fact, the vast majority of the film, the whole Glen or Glenda thing, is about a man who wears women's clothing and not surgical operations. Bela Lugosi opens our film in a manner in which it's unclear even if he knew what the film was about, but it's poetic and enthralling in its own unique way.
People, all going somewhere. Pull the string. Dance to that. Which one is created for?
Maybe this is a reference to puppetry, as if Lugosi is pulling the strings, making the people dance. It could just be total gibberish, and I love it. Sometimes there's a fine line between genius and incomprehensible, pretentious bullshit. Lugosi moonwalks across said line whenever he's on screen.
A new life is begun. A life is ended.
Perfectly normal placement of a bed right in the middle of the room.
Let me see that note.
The records will tell the story. I was put in jail recently. Why? Because I, a man, was caught on the street wearing women's clothing.
So we get a sense that we're going to see a pretty sensitive, compassionate portrayal of transvestism, and we mostly are. No transvestites are presented as bad people, for instance. They are people suffering through society's treatment and their own inner turmoil. But of course there's good and bad in every group, and Ed Wood decided to recycle the Glen/Glenda transvestism motif in two of his novels produced in the 1960s, Killer in Drag, in which Glen becomes Glenda when it's time to murder people, and its follow-up, Death of a Transvestite, in which Glen/Glenda is on death row. So yeah, overall a pretty high psychopath hit rate. Given those odds, I'd keep them at arm's length.
This was my fourth arrest for the same act. This is the only way. Let my body rest in death forever.
Without the rest of the room to see, it's almost as if the radiator is sentient.
Sure, there are a dozen technical flubs and random nonsense too, but all good art is organic. There's a guy wearing a Timex in Ben-Hur, for God's sake.
Inspector, doctor, sit down. Thank you. This type of case comes to me as well as yourself many times during the course of 1 month.
I wonder what case they're talking about. Probably the suicide of the transvestite that we've just seen, but just to make sure, they should mention that's what they're talking about over and over again.
The suicide? The suicide.
They're talking about the suicide.
Most of us have our idiosyncrasies. I think in the case that we're referring to, I need advice.
Let's get our story straight. You're referring to the suicide of the transvestite?
They're talking about the suicide.
Yes.
Those whose sex can be changed, they're the easy ones. But what of those who so desperately want to be of the opposite sex, yet can't change their sex? Such as was the case with Patricia, the suicide.
Oh yeah, right, the suicide.
I'd like to understand this, Doctor, as best you can tell me.
Only the infinity of the depths of a man's mind can really tell the story.
Story is begun.
It's great we have Bela Lugosi to tell us when the story begins, not at the start of the film or beginning of the film, but 11 minutes in.
The Bela Lugosi portions of the movie seem like such an afterthought to the central story, which is too bad considering that they are also the most compelling.
This is when we first see the actual Glen/Glenda, played by Ed Wood. The suicide, remember the suicide? I'm talking about the suicide of the transvestite, their suicide. That was Patrick/Patricia. We'll be introduced to Alan/Anne later, meaning every person in the film's feminine alter ego is a play on their male name. Suicide.
One might say, there, but for the grace of God, go I.
That's a striking title, different font from the rest of the paper and raised up on cardboard, one edge poking up slightly, and the story itself seems totally unrelated. Instead, it appears to be a rather dry account of unseen taxes on purchased goods.
Once, not so very long ago, the people of the world were saying,
airplanes, huh? Why, it's against the Creator's will.
That is so me.
Automobiles? Bad. They scare the horses.
Strangely enough, nature has given us all these things. Yet, the world is shocked by a sex change.
The headline strikes me as daft, but then I remember all the attention Christine Jorgensen did get, and I guess not.
If the Creator had meant us to be born girls, we certainly would have been born girls.
Are we sure?
Underneath the ineptitude, this is an impassioned plea for tolerance. Many of Wood's points, ridiculously presented though they are, make sense. So our laughter is tempered with sadness, regret that a truly one-of-a-kind filmmaker with so much on his mind and in his heart had so little talent to express it.
This person is a transvestite, a man who is more comfortable wearing girls' clothes. Give this man satin undies or even the lounging outfit he has on, and he's the happiest individual in the world.
He looks comfy. I wouldn't say he looks happy, though.
He wanted to look like himself and be identified. And I wanted to marry him very attractive. I had a wig that flattered his face. But he says, no, I don't want to look pretty. I don't want to look like something I'm not. I want to look like Ed Wood. I'm a transvestite. That's my life story. Do it.
Glen is engaged to be married to Barbara, a lovely, intelligent girl.
Say no more, lovely, intelligent. We have ourselves a character.
It's been a long year. But now, my studies are through, college is concluded, and I'm free at last.
For the time being.
Huh? Oh.
These two were actually a couple. Her name's Dolores Fuller. They were engaged to be married at one point. In the Tim Burton film, Sarah Jessica Parker plays her, and Fuller wasn't ecstatic with how she was treated.
And she didn't bother to do any research. When she was asked by David Letterman, well, what's Dolores like? Is she still alive? She turned her head because she didn't want to give me any airtime. She says, I'm going home and have a ground glass cocktail. I met her at the press party after the Ed Wood movie, and she said, I just got through telling everybody that I just played the part of the worst actress in the history of film.
And she was probably the worst forgive me, the worst actress I've ever seen on film in my life. She had no inflection or intonation and no instincts as an actress, which is unheard of. It just seems impossible. But she did it.
She did. She pulled it off.
Fabulous.
That wasn't nice. It wasn't professional. She didn't know me, you know.
Dolores Fuller does not come across as a good actress in this film, but would go on to find success writing songs for Elvis Presley. So clearly there were strengths that were not played to here.
Huh? Oh. How about joining me for an after-dinner drink?
The living room?
Mm-hmm.
Characters in this often announce where they're going before going there rather than just ending the scene.
What does modern man have to look forward to? And get the hat. Better still, get the receding hairline. Men's hats are so tight they cut off the blood flow to the head, thus cutting off the growth of hair.
I'm not sure about the science behind that, but I think the simplest solution would be either to not wear a hat, which is an option. You don't have to wear a hat, or just wear a looser hat. You know, no one is forcing you to wear a tight hat.
When modern woman's day of work is done, that which is designed for her home comfort is comfort. Hats that give no obstruction to the blood flow. Hats that do not crush the hair. Interesting thought, isn't it?
Well, it is. Tight hats are no good. That's something I haven't quite learned just now, but it's good to reinforce. Let's see what else this film can reinforce.
Just for comparison, let's go native. Back to the animal instinct. There, in the lesser civilized part of the world, it's the male who adorns himself with the fancy objects, such as paints, frills, and masks.
He's just got a mask on. I guess paints and frills weren't in the budget. Maybe they blew it on the shrunken heads and skulls. Really confusing the message of this being an ideal situation.
The animal instinct. Bird and animal life. Is it not so that it's the male who is the fancy one? Could it be that the male was meant to attract the attention of the female? What's so wrong about that?
There's just something about a man dressed as the devil forcefully removing a woman from a dance circle to presumably fornicate with her that seems pretty upsetting. But it was a different time, and I've seen similar footage in Three Stooges documentaries.
Love candy? Oh boy, Mirabelle, maybe it'll make her love me.
Tony, Black Tigress. As violent as the Watts riot, and as lustful as a cat in heat, Tony is black and a whore. A whore, for the organization. The organization, the most powerful force in the black community, can stand for freedom or for death. By Edward.
What's so wrong about that? Little Miss Female, you should feel quite proud of the situation. What is it that would happen were this individual to appear this way on the street? You're doing it now, laughing. Yet, it's not a situation to be laughed at.
Glen is shown studying women's clothes in a shop window. Dr. Alden points out that men's clothes are dull and restrictive, whereas women can adorn themselves with attractive clothing, with outrageous/bizarre claims. Women's clothes comfy? In the days of the iron bra and the panty girdle?
Glen is a transvestite, but he is not a homosexual.
I need you to know that.
I can't stand it any longer. Nothing is sacred to him, even my briefs. But, Your Honor, ruffles on his shirts and shorts. Really?
Glen is engaged to be married to Barbara, a lovely, intelligent girl.
Lovely, intelligent. We've heard it before, but yes, she remains lovely and intelligent, and she always will be a female character in a vast pit of female characters, each so lovely and intelligent, blending into one big, lovely, intelligent vision, trotted back out with a new hairdo and smile whenever a film, or a dirty football kit, or even a salad requires a bit more loveliness and intelligence.
The problem? Glenda, Glen's other self.
Have you seen the paper yet?
No, why?
Isn't that a strange case? I wonder what I would do in a case like that if I were in the mental turmoil that person went through. Or if I suddenly realized that something was mentally wrong with you. Ooh, it's hard to visualize. Here we are, two perfectly normal people, got to be married and lead a normal life together.
Excellent room read. She's on point. Meh. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. L'habit ne fait pas le moine, il y a un cuit dans le potage. Ivan Etnioj.
A stared with my mouth open at Bela Lugosi's recitation and the random buffalo scene. Summon est an intended avant-garde.
Can I help you, sir?
Yeah. Let me see a nightie.
Well, we have this here. Would you like that? Has lace?
Perhaps he admires the material too long.
Yeah, perhaps it's that, or perhaps it's his low, breathy way of speaking while he pretends his fist is a breast in the dress.
You can see how sheer the material really is.
Yes.
Beware, beware, beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. He eats little boys.
Ed Wood gets a 10 on just weirdness. Just gotta love the balls on this guy.
How a Man Changed His Sex soon will be rushed to the screen. It's documentary, exclaimed Wood. We talked to hundreds of people and psychiatrists. We do exploitation pictures, boomed producer Weiss.
Tell me, dragon, do you eat little boys? Puppy ducktails and big fat snails?
If the dragon would only answer Lugosi, the runtime could be reduced a little bit.
The added footage in Glen or Glenda was because you had to have a picture that was at least 70 minutes. And in fact, you couldn't sell foreign unless it was 90 minutes, because foreign didn't have a double feature. So, in order to be able to stretch out the footage, enough for 70 minutes of running time, we had to use every bit of the footage that was shot because film was precious. That was the type of deal that all independents found themselves in.
I like to think Lugosi didn't know what he was raising his eyebrows to. It would break my heart a little bit to find out otherwise.
I think that he took advantage of my father's need for desire to work and need for money, and put him in roles which today are I think, pretty near the bottom of the barrel. And I don't even like to see those movies. I won't go see them.
Beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. Puppy dog tails and big fat snails. Beware, take care. Beware.
Throw Satan in there. Why not? A herd of buffalo stampeding below Lugosi? Why not? Being trampled by the herd would symbolize being run over by society for an urge to cross-dress, wouldn't it? Symbolism.
Glen, I don't fully understand this, but maybe together we can work it out.
What about their children, Doctor? Would their children become the same way their father is?
No. Transvestism is not hereditary.
Are any of them actually cured?
Oh, yes, many, many of them. Once the source of supply is found, it can be stopped.
Right, okay, so no contact with women, no walking past shop windows. That way one can be cured of this disease. It's a bizarre way to look at it, but Ed Wood's transvestism apparently manifested in bizarre ways. Lyle Talbot, the inspector in this film, spent some drunken time with him after everything wrapped up.
About 2 in the morning, there's a rap on the door, and it's Eddie. And he said, "You got to get me home." Of course, he's still, hungover and everything like that. I said, "Well, I can't take you home at this time. I mean, my wife hears this. Now, she's never met him." And she said, "Well, let him we'll go in with the kids." I said, well, anyway, that was decided. So we gave him our room. Anyway, about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're having breakfast, the two kids, and out of bedroom comes Eddie, and he's got my wife's silk, and he got this on with a bra. And Paula had never seen him before even. My reaction was only one of great fury, anger. And I said, "Get back in there and get out of here. You got to get out of here." And that was the last I saw of him.
Talbot worked with Edward in 1954 on Jailbait. He was also in Plan 9 from Outer Space, which came out in 1957.
Quite honestly, I worked for him because I needed the money,
In all our talks, I've learned these pertinent facts. Glen's father had no love for his son.
There you go, moving on.
Glen, you can kill this fictitious character of yours anytime you wish. For your happy ending, it's the only way.
Should I let him continue to wear girls' clothing? Or should I put my foot down?
If you put your foot down, he'd only go behind closed doors. Love is the only answer. Glenda must be transferred to you.
Supposing Glen never gets over wearing girls' clothing.
Would it matter to you very much?
Then what is the problem? Why are they even there?
I love Glen. I'll do everything I can to make him happy.
He only showed me the portion of the script that I was in, so I didn't really know the full story. When I went to the premiere, which was released months later, and saw Eddie in his women's clothes, the wig and the dress and everything, I was very embarrassed. I said, "How could you do that? How could you put our life on the screen?" And I guess he just got drunk and didn't want to face me with it.
Soon, due to a happily married life, the remembrance of the psychiatric treatments, and Barbara's love and understanding, Glenda begins to disappear forever from Glen. Glen has found his mother.
What?
His little sister.
What?
His wife, and his Glenda, all in one lovely package. Thus, Glen's case has a happy conclusion.
And when we broke up, I had to support him. He was broke, but he was a writer, producer, director, actor. He could do everything, and I saw that talent, so I had to give myself up and just help him. And but after 2 years, I had to go after my own career. I'm just sorry that after I had to leave him, he got to drinking again and hurt his health, and I feel sorry because he had so much talent.
But what of the hundreds of other less fortunate Glens the world over?
Yes. But what of the others? Less fortunate Glens the world over.
Tell us what's to be done.
Oh, snips and snails and puppy duck tails.
And then it ends.